Well, good morning. Than what we normally do. We'll get into that in a moment. Let's start off with an opening prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day here in Royal Oak. We're dealing with some really interesting and troubled times when all of our rules and processes for developing things have just gone out the door. The devil's having his due with us at times. But Lord, we know that through you and with you, you're consistent and grace and love is abounding. For this we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So folks, let me go through the process and procedures here that we're going to use today. This is not necessarily the way we're going to do it in the future. This is our first introduction to a normal voters meeting now since November, and dealing with this pandemic thing. So the process that we're going to use, this is going to be a voters meeting. I don't know if we're going to have a quorum. It looks like we probably do actually have a quorum here, but we're going to be live streaming this and people will be able to vote from their home. However, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're voting from your house, we're going to assume you're voting yes, unless you call in. And I believe there's a number on the live stream that allows you to call in, but you're going to call in essentially only with a question if you have one, or with a negative vote. It's going to be about a minute delay, so we're going to have to deal with that, but I think we can get through that. Also, I've had a number of people ask how they can become a voting member when we haven't had a normal voters meeting. Remember, if you're a voting member, you should sign up, and there's sheets in the lobby for you to sign up. And to be a voting member, you have to have signed up at a meeting within the last year. Now, we haven't been able to do that currently with things that are going on. So what we're going to do is, when there's a vote, and we only have 2 votes, we'll go through this, but when there's a vote, I'm going to first ask for everybody to vote by a raise of hands. And the purpose of that is to get a sense of where the congregation is as a whole. And then I'm going to ask for a second vote on the same topic, just the voting members. So you know who you are, I hope. If you're a voting member, on the second vote, raise your hand. And then we'll tally any call-in votes and figure out where we're at. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none. There are meeting minutes in the lobby. I think some of them were passed out also. We don't have them on the screen. They're long, involved. So are there any changes to the meeting minutes at this point in time? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented? Support? All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Opposed? Minutes have been passed. New member issues. First, release of members from transfer out. We have Matt Munyon. And removed by request, Anna Calhoun, Maria Rodriguez, Brian Dumont and family, and Christine Jones. Is there a motion to accept these changes? Support? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Are there any new voting members here today? Okay, can you give us, first off, did you sign in? You won't be able to vote as a voting member today, but you will be able to raise your hand to get the sense of the congregation. Next time you will be able to. All right? All in favor for accepting them as new members? Opposed? Welcome aboard. Moving on to a financial report. I'm going to bring Eric up here. Keep in mind, we had a first reading, and it was live streamed back on the 24th, I think it was, of May. Yes, 24th of May. There are a few minor corrections here that Eric will run through with us. We're not going to vote on this right away. Keep in mind, folks, we have 1 hour for this. So we're going to go through things, and we're not going to do reports by boards or officers. We're simply going to have them available to you online or at the office. So with that, Eric?
The finance report or the budget?
Finance report. I'm sorry. Did I say budget? Yeah.
Much better. You have the finance report that you may have picked up from the outside. I'll be pretty brief on this. This is for the last quarter for our fiscal year, April and May. You can see there the particular numbers for contributions. I'd like to make note that we've done extremely well since the pandemic. And that's mainly because a lot of people have gone to automatic withdrawal from their bank accounts. So it's been quite regular on the contributions that we've received. They're actually higher than before the pandemic. So that was very encouraging that you see on those contribution numbers. And you can see on the bottom left-hand side, our weekly average has gone up to $11,115.73. And that is significantly higher than it has been than March. So we're really pleased how that's going, and we hope that people will continue with the automatic withdrawal and sending in their contributions on a regular basis. The only other number I just want to make note of are two things. School tuition, you can see that the April numbers and the May numbers, they're gone down. May is the last month that we have school tuition coming in. So for June, July, August, until September 15th, that's the next time that we will receive tuition. Why do I mention that? You can see that on the bottom left-hand side in the surplus section, we have $86,912 in reserve. Why do we have that in reserve? We know we plan for the summer because summer contributions are way down, and you're going to see that number come down significantly because we have no tuition coming in for the next 3 months. So that's why that number is that high, and some other adjustments we had during the year on our budget that made that higher than usual. All right, are there any questions?
Thank you, Eric. Once again, any questions from our live stream audience? Very good. Is there a motion then to accept the financial report as presented? Support. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Thank you. As I had mentioned, we're not going to do board reports. There's copies, some copies out in the lobby. There'll be copies at the office, or you can have them sent to you via email and a PDF. Just contact the office for that. Committee reports. There are just a couple of things that I want to touch on. We need a number of officers. First off, we do not currently have a vice president. That role has been vacant now for an extended period of time. I'd like to get that filled. Also, you may be aware that my term was up last November. I'm not thinking that after November I'm going to be on as an officer again, so we're going to need some officers. We also need some people on boards, particularly elders. So if you're at all interested in becoming a board member or an officer, please let myself or the office know that, and we'll work out the details with you. Property and Housing Committee. I have this remaining on as an agenda item because it's going to be an important component when we look at the budget. What you need to know is last year when we agreed that we would be looking at the potential sale of the 4 houses, just as a review, 2 of the houses are owned by the Fund Operating Board, 2 of them are owned by the church. The Fund Operating Board houses are now essentially vacant and can be going on the market very soon. Any proceeds from those houses will go back to the Fund Operating Board. They made an investment years ago, the investment will go back to them. As far as the properties that the church owns, the vicarage and the parsonage, at this point in time, Pastor Andrzejewski and Rachel have moved into the parsonage. Now, keep in mind, they're fully aware of the history of the house, and it has been tested for mold, and everything was deemed clean. So it's been all cleaned up, and they have moved in. I think they're moving in on a temporary basis. I believe their intent is to eventually buy a house in the area, but they needed something fairly quickly. They're in the parsonage currently. The vicarage is going through some improvements, and at the conclusion of those improvements, the expectation is that that will go up for sale. If there's any interested parties at the church in that house, we're welcome to show it to you. It'll actually benefit the church a little bit, 3% I think it is, if it is sold to a church member. So keep that in mind. The value of that house is important. The value of the vicarage from our real estate broker, now this was done prior to the pandemic, but she assures me that it is good to at least the 4th of July of this year, and then they're not sure what's going to exactly happen. But it was originally valued at $259,000, just to give you a benchmark. The parsonage was valued at $417,000. Now keep in mind, those houses, when they were purchased as an investment in the church. We were concerned about parking, so we invested in those properties in order to maintain the integrity of our congregation as far as parking for Sundays. That problem went away many years ago when the city bought the lot kitty corner to us. So we never needed to develop those properties. However, they've been an okay investment, and right now we're looking at a different type of investment. So that's where we stand with the properties currently. I'm sure we'll have more at our September meeting. I'd like to flip a couple of things here. First off, if we look at the agenda for new business, there we go. You'll see that we have an item that I'd really like to take care of first off before we get to the budget. So there's a motion from the council, move to include the new housing allowance for Julie Thomas of $25,000 per year. This will be effective with her July 15th paycheck. Is there a motion to support this? Support. Are there any questions relative to this? We've done this for many of our staff, if not all of our staff. So Julie, who was living in one of the houses that we're looking at selling, has now purchased a house. She's looking for this housing allowance. Seeing no questions from the online, all in favor? This is voting or non-voting members, everybody. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? I see no opposed, so now let's make it official. Voting members only. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Very good. Thank you. That was an official thing that we had to get done. With that now, we're going to go back to unfinished business and have our second reading of the budget. Keep in mind there were copies at the end of the May 24th presentation. Copies were put out into the lobby of what was presented at that point in time. For the most part, that budget stands as it was, save for 2 or 3 small minor adjustments, and Eric's going to go through those. But if you want, there are still copies out in the lobby for you to look at.
Okay, I'd like to do the same thing I did on the first reading. I want to start with the expenses first and take a look at those particular items and explain a few things to you in case you're not aware of that. Ken already hinted around that most of our expenses are mostly salary and things like that. I think we're talking about like 85% are salaries for staff and things like that. So a lot of these numbers are very minor compared to what we have for salaries and benefits and things like that. So there's not much changes, but there are some fluid things that we have to deal with. Like Ken mentioned, I already had 2 or 3 changes on Friday already, and but they were minor type of things that we don't have to worry about. But we'll see how it affects us during the summer and the like. And some of this information, again, I'll explain where they come from. Some numbers aren't really important to you, only because we have a unified budget with the school and the like. So first, page 3, expenses. And you can see that there's the administration accounts. You can see that includes something like contribution envelopes and dues and things like that. Not much of a change. Most of these numbers are based on historical data that Ken Mills has put together, how much we have spent in the past. And these are numbers we decided would satisfy those particular areas. So that first section there for administration. You can see that we're starting to spend more money on technology, and obviously that's something that we're working toward as we move into future endeavors in technology. Any questions on administration there that you may have? Seeing none? The next section, Christian Day School. That has nothing really to do with your contributions. That comes from the book fees that we collect from the families that are in the school. They pay a $300 book fee for the expenses, and then what we do is we break down those funds into various categories for the principal to allocate funds for in that particular area. Page 4, flip it over. Christian worship, worship nursery, altar supplies, music ministry. Pretty straightforward. Board of Elder expenses, anywhere from adult classes all the way down to MOPS. VBS, we won't be expending any money this particular year, but we're already allocating. We anticipate that happening next year, so we are keeping that in there. Evangelism, you can see what we contribute to Missouri Synod and the Michigan District. Stewardship, youth. One change that we have in the fund operating board, that one's pretty good. we put 15,000, and this print is a little bit smaller here for me to read. Young adults, continuing staff education, that is based on what the faculty has told us, what classes they may be taking this year to maintain their certification and the like. And then you're going down to church property. Again, those numbers are determined by what we have spent in the past and what we think we'll be spending this next year. Not too many changes there. The biggest one that you can see there is what Royal Oak is sticking to us on stormwater. That is a new major expense that we're going to be paying $19,200 more because of what they are doing in that area. Questions on page 4. Page 5. Obviously, the biggest expense that we have coming up in the budget for next year is in the pastoral office. So we have a new pastor coming in. Therefore, his salary is in there, and all the expenses that are associated with a pastor, like mileage and travel and moving expenses, conferences, and things like that. So that is the major increase we have in expenses for this next year because we have a new pastor coming on to staff. Debt interest and principal. You can see in that particular section, you can see that we spend roughly $35,000 a year to manage our debt. And then moving down to the last section of payroll, benefits, and taxes. Staff salaries, payroll taxes, Blue Care Network. You can see how much we expend on benefits as far as retirement and health care. We pay their deductible for the staff too. It's one of the great benefits we have there and the like. Now, things that we've made some changes there that of note. On salaries, we have done some readjustment on salaries of our staff, the school staff particularly. What we have attempted to do this year is give the faculty a 2% raise. I know that's not much, but some of you may be aware that we haven't given a raise to the teaching staff for about 10 years. 10 years, we're way behind district recommendations. Now, over the last 10 years, we've given at least 3 cash disbursements, roughly about 3% of what we have left in that surplus account as we got into the fiscal year, usually in September, maybe December. When we saw where we're at, then we're able to disperse money to the faculty there. I know it's a token amount, 2%, but we think we want to show the faculty that we're trying to do more in that particular area. So there's a slight increase in there. The other major change we've made is that because the enrollment is so low in the school in grades 5 through 8, there's potentially only 13 students in grades 5 through 8. We felt that wasn't a good use for Greg to be over at the school teaching some of the classes he did. We are going to keep Greg over there doing the music and choir and band, etc. But we're going to move him across the street more in the church ministry side to assist Pastor Angieski in various areas. For instance, I'm sure they haven't agreed on some things yet, maybe some hospital visits, working in chapel, support in worship. That's part of that investment that we're thinking about in the future. We've been talking for years now about getting a family minister. We haven't been able to do that because of our finances. This might be a drop in the bucket to help our pastors out. We heard from our last 2 pastors their concern about getting things done from Pastor Schultz and Pastor Schmidt. We made promises when we made our calls to him that we would give them some help. Haven't been able to do it. We think we can do that now. Based on the enrollment at the school right now, we think it's a good idea to bring Greg over for support for the pastor. Now, that doesn't affect salaries at all. accept the cost that we have for the school and staff, how much money is going into the school. So that's our other major change that's occurring in there. Everything will be agreed upon. Please note that Greg is not a family minister. He is just assisting the pastor wherever he can. Questions on expenses? Yes, I missed something. That would be under income. That'll come under income. Okay, let's go to income. Whoop. There's 2 questions, 3 questions. Whoop. Oh boy, I'm in trouble.
We do have a microphone here. So
All right, if you can be loud enough, I'll try to answer it for you.
Can I try to answer that? Yeah, the question was, there was at one time a description for a family life minister. And the question is whether or not Greg will evolve to a family life minister. Will there be a job description for Greg's role? Yes, there will. Do we have one currently? No, we don't. What we are working towards is this. Remember when we had the description for and the need for a family life minister, the hope was to get some young, vibrant person to help grow the school and the church in the way of the young adults. It's been an issue that we talked about at 3 of our leadership meetings over the last 5 years, was growing the young adult population here at the church. And we felt we needed somebody young and vibrant to do that. Well, now we have a young and vibrant pastor. And he's going to need help. The hope and expectation is that he's going to be looking beyond our walls at people and bringing them in the door. But there's a lot of work to be done within these walls. Greg has years of experience and understanding at what it takes. So the hope is that his job description will revolve around the support necessary to give Pastor Andrzejewski the opportunity to walk outside and bring people back in. That is what the job description will entail. We haven't gotten that written yet. Other questions? Understood. And at this point, that is truly a fact. Right now, we have been working, I think, diligently to support and build the school. If you walk through the building, you've heard me say this before, if you walk through the building, it's never looked better. It's in great shape. We have a staff now that I think, granted they're not all called teachers, but they are strong, good Christian teachers. We have a principal, Dr. Margie Baldwin, who has years of experience and understands what her role is to help grow the school. That has been established as one of the priorities for her. We are prepped for growing the school. And that's what we're trying to to maintain at this point in time. Remember, the school is down to 43 students? 41 students. So it's lower than it has been in a long time, and we still have a decent number of staff there supporting it. So the school itself is strong. What we need to do is build up the census, and that's what we're aiming for.
Well, certainly Greg fits the vibrant, young. Just a side comment for Dr. Baldwin. With Greg going across the street serving at the church ministry, she will be teaching a few classes next year. That's to kind of make up a little bit for the loss of Greg teaching those particular classes. My personal viewpoint, again, I think Ken reiterated it. Everything that Greg does is going to be agreed upon between him and the pastor. Hopefully there'll be more. Remember, one of our main considerations was for mission outreach, getting out into the community. I can see more things musically getting out into the community as well, too. So there are lots of opportunities there going on. So any other questions as far as expenses? Now the hard part. How do we do it? How do we pay for everything? And there are some concerns we have as a board about that. So if you go back to page 1, and how are we going to do it as far as income? First of all, we looked at the contributions, and from what we've seen, and some of that may change a little bit too, because we had some positive things happen the last 3 months. The contributions at this point we see just going down a little bit, 1%. You can see the number we assigned for that is about 1% less than last year, the $638,500 that we anticipate for contributions. Our concern again is in the second section, and Ken mentioned that a little bit. Right now, that number of $127,700, we're in school income now, is based on about 40 students. That is, if they get everyone back, it would be about 41 students. Right now they have 29 or 30 enrolled for next year, 29 or 30. Some of those families are owe money from tuition this year, or have other things that they have not paid for, so they have not been able to enroll because they have some debt there as well. We've been assured that they are coming back, but the committee has heard that before for the last 5-6 years. And come around August 15th, then they decide they're not going to come back. So we have some concerns there. If we have less students this year, that'll be the 6th year in a row that our enrollment has gone down. So we are very concerned. That number may go down. Hopefully it will go up. But we have some concerns there. Preschool tuition, that's a solid program. They've made money over the last years, so we're not too concerned about latchkey. You can see that's numbers. We are advising the school board to increase that. When you have smaller numbers in the school, you'll have smaller numbers in the latchkey. And the other concern we have there, as far as paying for latchkey, I failed to mention that in expenses. One of the things, yes, we're trying to give a raise to the faculty, but also we were trying to give a raise a little bit to the workers in latchkey. We can't get people to work for $7.50 an hour anymore. So in the increase that we have in salaries, we're trying to boost that up to around at least $10 an hour, at least, maybe more. We'll see what happens, what we can do. Otherwise, we can't get people to work in these groups, so that's a concern there. So that's your tuition number. The next two numbers, tuition surcharge, book fees, and school income. Again, that goes back to the book fees that are paid by the parents. Rental income, lounge, gym rental. We rented the gym out last year, St. Mary's, for their basketball league. Any questions on that page? not page one. Yes, all right.
Eric. In the mic. In the mic.
We are looking for the estimated cost for the year, weekly. We've determined it's about $12,300 we're going to need. But there's another number based on what we have to talk a little bit later. If we don't do certain things, it's going to go up to $14,300. And you can guess where I'm going maybe on that. Okay, page 2. Board Ministries, Board of Trustees. No numbers there. Grants to high school and that's Lutheran High Northwest. We found out there's going to be one student going there, so that's not going to be a zero. I think it's going to be about $2,000 we're going to have to get from the Byerline Fund and the like for that, so that's one of the changes. Debt reduction, LCMS missions, nothing big there. Arts, beats, and eats income. I don't know if some of you saw the local NBC report that was either Friday or Saturday. They had the promoter on TV interviewing about that. We are very concerned about the income that we're going to receive from Arts, Eats, and Beats. They said that there's going to be a decision coming July 15th of whether or not it's going to go as usual, whether or not there'll be a reduced program. They've already indicated that there's not going to be the national concerts. I'm sure the pastor will appreciate that going on, and all the band things that are going on. They may use food trucks instead of vendors on one side of the street, or it may not go on at all. Those are the three things. They indicated July 15th as a date. We have a number in there, you can see that, that may hold or it may not. We are concerned about that. Okay, Ferndale School reimbursement. That is a change. There's a number there, you can see 38,000. That is now down about $12,000. We were just informed by Dr. Baldwin that Ferndale will no longer be supporting the kindergarten teacher. It has to do with politics and I think government and religion and things like that. We've lost $12,000 in income as a result of that because they paid for most of our kindergarten teacher last year. So that's going to affect our numbers there. And I think that's all on that page that I can see. Any questions on page 2? Page 3, last one. Christian worship incomes, board ministry incomes. Whoops, I'm on page 4. Oh, maybe there are only 2 pages. It's 3 goes into expenses. The bottom line that we need to look at is that our budget calls for $1,084,820. We have about a 7% increase. The bottom line, if we want to keep the school open for another year, we're going to have to come up with a little over $91,000 to meet this budget. $91,000. And this is where we are proposing that we use the proceeds from the selling of one of the houses to meet the budget, $91,000. Now we'll entertain any questions with that number being announced.
I'm not checking for text. I just want to make sure time-wise we're good. Let me alter the perspective, if I may, for a moment. We have a school that has been in existence for over 100 years. That ministry is the strongest ministry, the longest lasting ministry that this church has had. It's in better shape now than it's been physically in a long time. We have a great staff. We have a good principal. We need to make an investment in this school. That's what we've been preparing for. A couple years ago, the goal was to become accredited. Thank you, Rita. With your help and the staff's help, it's become accredited. The first time it's an accredited school. We now have everything set up for that school to grow. Yes, we're in a pandemic, and who knows what's going to happen with that. But one of the things that's being discussed is small class size. And you know what? We have that. It's potentially a great environment from a lot of perspectives. So let's keep that in mind when we look at where we invest. Those houses were an investment in the past for this church. We are investing in parking lots. Now we're investing in the school. So when we look at this motion for this budget, let's keep in mind what it is that we're investing in. If we divest ourselves of the houses, what are we going to do with the money? Sit on it? Put it in the bank and hope the interest comes at 0.2%? We need an investment now in this church. We have a vibrant new pastor. We have a great school. The staff is strong. We need to grow it. And I think all the ducks are in a line for that to happen. So please keep that in mind. Are there any questions? Yeah. Well, not necessarily. The tuition assistance is mainly for member families to help them get over the tuition amount. There's already a break for member families. At some point, where do we stop? And just a thing to keep in mind, when it comes to tuition assistance, we have an outside service evaluating the financial status of everyone who applies, and they make recommendation as to what type of assistance we should be providing. Is that correct? So it's not us making a subjective, we'll give you 5, you 2, you 1. It's a recommendation based on financial need.
Just address that one. Just a quick comment. The funds that we use for tuition assistance are funds that congregation members turn in to us. That is supported by donations. I just distribute, I'm on that committee for tuition assistance. 4 families applied this year. 3 were determined to have needs, so money was distributed. They received letters that they are receiving some funding.
Art, do you have a question? Art, do you mind coming up to the mic? Thank you. Correct.
And you also need to grow and build this school. Absolutely. But the statement, it sounded like we need to spend $900,000 to keep the school sort out perfect. And that shouldn't be the case, right?
No.
The uniform budget, yes, we need to grow enrollment. More people are confused on Sunday. What else?
Correct. That is very true. And let me give you another perspective on this. When we talked about a family life minister, back a number of years ago, when we put together that job description, we defined the costs that we anticipated it would take. And we put, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I believe it was about $70,000 towards the salary for that person, and another $15,000 for program costs. We couldn't just bring them in and then tell them they had no money to work with. So we figured that was going to be an $85,000 cost in order to have a family life minister. Now that cost is kind of reflected in the budget the way it is now. We've had a few minor adjustments because of the salary that Ferndale Schools isn't going to pay and a couple of other minor things, but it really is an offsetting cost from what we anticipated from Family Life Minister, if that helps. Other questions? Can we go then to the next slide? Oh. Can you come up to the mic, Tina? It is, I think.
Oh, she's coming up. I want to make mention that, I didn't mention the money we have. I had to get word now. The 85,000. That's going to keep us going.
Oh, Eric just reminded me, keep in mind that cash reserve that we have of $85,000. It's higher than what we've had in the past. By the way, thank you everybody for continuing your contributions, particularly during these last several months. Who knows what could have happened if everyone stopped? But you didn't, and we thank you for that. And now that puts us in a position where we have that $85,000 cash reserve, where in the past we were in the range of 40-ish. So we're in better shape now than we have been going into the summer in the past. Tina?
I just have to say, is this on?
It's on.
As a teacher, over the years, I have had so many conversations with parents who would love to have their children here or continue to have their children here, but the cost is somehow prohibitive. And I am not in a position to say, I can say, turn in your paperwork, I can say there is a committee that reviews these things. I can make no promises. I know it is really a choice finally in everybody's heart how much of their income they are willing to put into the education of their child. However, it is heartbreaking to see so many walk away and they would love to have their children at the school, but the cost is somehow something that they just can't come up with at the moment. I have turned way too many people, have seen too many people walk away over that piece. And again, it's a choice. It's a choice for everybody, but it is still, as just a little teacher, it's very hard to know how much people would love to have their kids at our school. I think it's a great school, and I don't just say that because I teach there. I wish every child that I meet, I wish could get the education that they could receive from St. Paul Lutheran School. And I've seen too many walk away over the cost. That is one piece. The second piece that I have to comment on while the sale of those houses is still up for conversation is I feel so strongly that this is a moment of hope in our history. It should be, it needs to be. It needs to be a moment of hope. And it's up to us to bring people here. It is not all on our pastor. I so much agreed with the words that our guest pastors have spoken to us about how it is up to us to bring people here. Those lots, we may not need them for parking right now, but I was under the impression in our last vote that when those houses went up for sale, that before they went up for sale, the church was going to be informed of that, the congregation somehow were going to be informed of that. I was hopeful that we would be looking at the minute in history what we need for the moment. And I understand where you're coming from now. But if those pieces go away, I have hope we could build a preschool or a daycare there. Or maybe the preschool would get big enough, or maybe the school would get big enough that we could use those not as a parking lot, but to actually build, or for green space that is so popular right now. In my mind, there's all kinds of possibilities for that land that still involve St. Paul Lutheran Church and School. So I just have to put that out there because I'm not giving up hope on it yet. I'm not giving up hope on growing. I'm not.
Just a couple points to parallel what Tina's saying. I don't think we're giving up on growing either. The hope is that we're going to use our resources in a very effective way. Are we using them effectively as rental properties or as a vicarage with nobody living in it? I don't think so. I believe, though, you had mentioned that we were going to bring it to the congregation at large. I believe we left that in the hands of the property committee. Now, we are informing you that that's the intent, but the goal was to leave the actual individual decisions in the property committee. As far as the cost for the school, I believe the cost for a non-member family right now is $4,700, and it's roughly half? It's half of that for a member family. Let's keep in mind that is lower than any other Christian school around here. So our tuition is already low. Would it be nice if we could charge nothing? Absolutely. But we're not in a position to be able to do that. We're struggling financially right now a little bit, trying to make it work. We're blessed with the opportunity to have a school that is in great shape, great staff, accredited, ready to grow, good principal, and we have some potential resources to support it. To me, that's a simple answer, but that's what we're going to be begging here in a moment. If I may, I'm going to open this up for the motion, then we'll have additional questions. So, from the Church Council, a move to accept the adopted 2020-2021 budget as presented in the second reading. Is there a motion for that? Support. Now, let's have questions relative to this budget. Art?
Ken, I'm just looking for some clarification on the process of the sale.
Okay.
Because the way the motion reads from the minutes, there's a statement that says it's understood that any sales transaction plans shall be approved by the church council, fund operation board, and voters before moving forward. Now, I understood it in the hands of the committee, but the way I read this, it sounds like it has to come to voters before there's a sale.
That's in the
I'm looking
meeting
for
minutes?
clarification.
Is that the meeting minutes you're referring to?
Meeting from last meeting that we just voted on and approved today.
Okay, my memory of that is wrong, or is different than what,
As was mine until I read it here and we passed it, so I assumed the minutes were correct.
well, Art, you put me in a pickle. I believe what we passed, and we'll have to go back and reference to make sure that's the meeting minutes are correct. I don't believe they are. Because there were actually some concerns stated that why didn't we have it in the congregation's hands rather than handing the congregation's power off to that committee. We talked about the idea of selling the houses, and there was no real objection to that. It was, when we sell it, is the church are you gonna come back for every individual sale. And we said no because there was the potential at the time to sell all 4 houses at once. So that's why we took it out. We'll have to check on that. But let me make formal notice now. We are looking to sell those houses.
How you interpreted art, but it says any sales transaction plans. It's not about selling, it's about the use, right? And we're talking about selling the use. So, in other words, the sale of the property is still left up to the committee. It's how we use the funds. And so, in talking about it in this budget process,
Yes.
I don't know if that's what I misinterpreted.
And you're, I'm not looking at that, but I believe that's what we were hoping to do, is make sure that how the funds are used
Right.
was going to be an issue that this voting congregation
Correct.
was going to make judgment on, and that's what we're asking for, or at least a portion of those funds in this budget.
So I think our remembering of the past motion actually is accurate. It's not about the selling, it's about the use of the funds, which is what we're talking about for the budget today.
Thank you,
Of course.
Steve.
Yep.
Other questions? Barring, yes.
School can support a 25% reduction in children if you only able to spend.
Well, probably not, but let's step back from that for a moment. Because in the past number of years, we've had people not come back or not reapply, but re-enroll, thank you, re-enroll to the last minute. And it's been just yanking on us, trying to understand how many kids we're going to have, and we don't know until a week after school starts, because people are still enrolling after school starts. So will we likely lose 10? You know, with this pandemic thing, it's hard to tell. But right now, we're planning on a possible smaller reduction. But as far as enrollment right now, yeah, it's 10. Is that answering your question? That's true. The point that's being made is because of the low number of children in school, parents will pull their children out of the school. And there is that possibility. We're trying to overcome that. Now, here's where this whole pandemic thing maybe is a good thing from the school's perspective, because everything that I'm hearing, at least, is that smaller class sizes are better and safer for our children. So we don't know where it's going to go. But we need to plan for at least what we truly expect or hope to expect. And we can, the question is, can we give some additional compensation or credit to families who are struggling, particularly during this pandemic? Fair? Right. And what we have done to try to address that is on the scholarship side of things, we've made certain that there's an emergency request option. So if somebody has run into a situation, particularly with the pandemic thing, for example, of losing their ability to pay, we have the ability, if they want to go through an emergency request approach. So there's a vehicle set up for it. But we were a little bit surprised, quite honestly, that we had only 4 families apply for the scholarship. And that opened up in April, March? The end of April. So,
And we left it open.
and we left it open for an extended period of time. I can't answer that. I don't know.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Let me tell you what I've done. The finance board handles tuition and monitors tuition payments and things like that. When some of those families, those 6 I'm talking about, I think I mentioned 6 families, I send letters out to them every month. And one of those letters we sent out to them, if there are some circumstances that you want us to know, we will deal with it. And there are a couple that did. Some, talked about the pandemic and things like that. We extended their payments through July, gave them another extra 2 months. And again, with the option, like Ken just mentioned, all right, if you got a financial issue, apply through Smart Aid and they will evaluate that. What I've also done, the committee for tuition assistance, is that we have established a cushion of about a couple $1,000s for emergency situations. All they have to do is ask. We let them know that's in the Viking and things like that. If they have a problem, come and talk to us. But we're just not going to hand out funds to people without some verification of what's going on. That's why I'm shocked when there's only 4 that applied. And one was not given some funds because the company said they should be able to afford it. That's what we pay them for, to analyze things, so there's no prejudice whatsoever. So we do try to work with families.
Okay, we're focused on the budget, and I know it revolves a lot around the school, but are there any other questions relative to the motion to accept the budget? By the way, folks, just a little sidebar here. There's an article in the Royal Oak Tribune about Pastor Andrzejewski. There's copies of this up in the lounge or in the lobby if you're interested.
Okay, thank you for this. I just wanted to make a comment, and one of my prayers has been that this church flourishes, the school flourishes, and I just want to say that we want to put this in the hands of God too. And so, if we want this, I'm trusting God for the whole income to raise up so we won't have to sell those properties over there. So I'm just saying that, again, it's in the hands of God. So whatever we're doing or whatever we're thinking, granted, we need to balance this out. There's a practical side to this too. And so that's what I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, let me point out something relative to the properties. The sale of the properties isn't driven by the needs in the budget. The sale of the properties we've been talking about for over a couple of years now, and the decision was made, I think, in September of last year, maybe even earlier, that we would consider selling the properties, that they were not what we need in the way of resources here at the church. Now, the situation with the budget simply is a beautiful overlay, if you will. But it's not contingent. Keep in mind we have our cash reserves available to us. We may not have to utilize the funds from the sale of the property. It doesn't mean we won't sell the property. Okay? Any other questions? Anything from the audience? So let's do the two votes again. First, the mood of the congregation. All in favor of accepting this budget? Let me read the motion. Move to accept and adopt the 2020-2021 budget as presented in the second reading. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, we have one opposed. Anything from the audience? Let's make this now official from a voter's perspective. So this is voters only. All in favor of accepting the current budget, raise your hand. All opposed? Again, anything? The budget now passes. Thank you, folks. Moving on then, the next voters' meeting is going to be scheduled for September, a Sunday, going back to our normal situation, but after a late service. Not sure exactly what date that's going to be just yet. I think we'll probably continue to do the live streaming of the voters' meetings, particularly until we get a vaccine for this virus thing. So keep in mind, we may move to the lounge, don't know that, but we'll try to keep you better informed in advance of the meeting when that's coming. The other thing that was mentioned was Arts Beats and Eats this fall. Right now, it sounds like it's still on to some degree. And keep in mind, folks, this is a big fundraiser for us, one of the biggest that we have. In the past, we've been benefiting to the tune of $25,000. We don't have that much in the budget this year, but we do have a substantial chunk of money. So the hope is that we'll be able to benefit from Arts Beats and Eats. But we need your help. It doesn't come free. We need participation. So keep in mind, when that starts up, and it usually is Labor Day weekend, we figure out a way that you can help during these difficult times. Lastly, I know at the last special voters meeting when we put in the request for Jake to come here as our pastor, and at the November meeting, I think we even talked about it, I mentioned that he is going to need a lot of support. That is still true. We're going to need to help this young new pastor in many different ways. So if you can find the time to assist in any way possible, please let him know that. He's gonna need help. With that, are there any other questions? Then is there a motion to adjourn? Support? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Why don't we close with the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Just a point, we've had some Zoom meetings, and I imagine many of you have, At the end of one of them, we said the Lord's Prayer. Was that a disaster? I mean, the mics were jumping all over the place. So don't try that. Thank you, folks.